what we started doing was, and we did it by accident, as we were writing content, we were reaching out to these blogs and publications that we were, in the end, going to link to, and we were asking them if they had anything extra to offer, like a quote or an additional piece of insight.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
And people are generally pretty happy to give that. It's sort of, it makes them feel good because, they're seen as the, authority on the topic.
Yeah.
All they have to do is hit reply and send you a very quick email with a quote or something like that. And so that's great. You get additional insight and a quote for your content.
Yeah.
But what you also get is when you do publish that article and you let that person know, because A, they're seen as an authority in the article, and B, they're kind of invested, they've put something into that article, the success rate of them sharing that article is significantly higher.
Hi, and welcome to episode 117 of the WP Elevation podcast. I'm Mike Killen, a WP Elevation coach and WordPress marketing specialist based in Devon in England. I'm very excited to announce that our feature guest this week is Simon Thompson, who is the brains behind Kite, which is a content marketing and content ROI specialist business. In this episode, Simon walks us through how to create content that generates return on investment and how to start creating a content strategy. Honestly, it's so pragmatic and so practical that you're going to be staggered at just how easy it is to finally create a content marketing plan for your agency and for your business that generates return on investment. Remember as well, I'm going to show you how to download the checklist, which is every single major point that Simon and I carry off. And yeah, this is a fantastic episode. I really enjoyed talking to Simon on this, and stay with us.
This is the WP Elevation Podcast, helping WordPress consultants elevate.
Hey, this episode of the WP Elevation Podcast is brought to you by WP Elevation. Well, more specifically, it's brought to you by a bunch of our happy customers. See, frankly, I feel a little bit awkward telling you how great WP Elevation is because you're probably not going to believe me because WP Elevation is my baby. It's something that we started over 3 years ago. Of course, now we're a team of coaches and mentors, and we have hundreds, and by the time you're listening to this, probably thousands of members all over the world. But it still really is something that I'm very passionate about. And of course, if you join WP Elevation, we make revenue and we make profit. So it's a little bit awkward if I tell you how great it is, because you probably think I'm just trying to sell you on it. And partially I am, because I know how beneficial the program is. So what I'd love to do instead is just introduce you to some of our customers. So if you go to wpelevation.com/thepodcast, all one word, you'll be able to hear some of those stories from our customers and hear for yourself how WP Elevation has impacted their business and changed their lives. I hope you enjoy that, and I hope you check it out at some point. Right now, let's get back to the podcast.
Hey, I'm Mike Killen from WP Elevation. I'm very pleased to have with me Simon Thompson from Content Kite. Simon, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much for having me, Mike.
Pleasure to be with you, mate. So, for those of you who don't know, those of us who are out there who don't know, tell us a bit about who you are, what your background is, what you're working on at the moment.
Sure thing. So I started out a career in marketing and media in one of the most traditional formats out there, being print.
Yep.
Essentially a sales role, and we were selling ads to construction companies, architecture companies within construction and architecture magazines. So needless to say, it wasn't the most exciting role out there. About a year after that, I was happy to get a role with a company in Australia called Ignite Media Brands, and they were essentially this solutions agency for channels, both digital and broadcast, like MTV, Nickelodeon, National Geographic, and, and a handful of others. But yeah, that was a really good way to sort of cut my teeth. We were working with pretty major brands there. And then I was lucky enough to get a role with a company called MI9, who were sort of a leader in the digital media scene in Australia at the time. Mm-hmm. They were a joint venture between Microsoft and one of the broadcast networks called Channel 9. And they had all of the MSN properties, so Skype, Outlook. They were partnered with Daily Mail, so a pretty significant digital network there. And we were working on content projects with L'Oreal, Nissan, BMW, Mondelez, and a few others. So yeah, I really enjoyed my time there, but for want of a better phrase, I got the entrepreneurial bug and decided to go do this by myself. So that's when I started Content Kite, and so we work with predominantly digital agencies, and we create content for them and help them acquire leads and sales through content.
Awesome. So Content Kite is a content marketing agency, is that right?
Yeah, I tend not to call it an agency because an agency suggests that it's a lot of custom, bespoke work, which is not necessarily what we do. We're more in the ilk of a productized service. So we solve a very specific problem for a specific end user. So we create blog content and do a number of other things along the lines of promotion and gathering email lists. But yeah, I tend not to call it an agency just because we do have a very set offering and we excel.
Yeah, you and I have been talking a little bit kind of via email about your role, where you fit within other businesses, and content marketing. The reason I was so excited to jump on this call is because I get content marketing. I'm a huge fan, and I think there are a number of misconceptions and people just doing it just plain wrong, particularly for our types of businesses, for WordPress consultants, WordPress businesses out there. So why is it that businesses, WordPress businesses, agencies need to be thinking about content marketing both for themselves and for their customers?
Yeah, so I think I've had this question before, and the best way to explain it is from this quote that I heard. And every time I go to mention this quote, I completely butcher it. And I thought
we'll edit it, right? You say what you want, we'll edit it. Yeah.
Well, I actually sort of figured that this question may come up, so I wrote it down. So I'm going to daggily read it out here. But yeah, I think it sums it up perfectly. But it's content marketing offers a promise that we as marketers can acquire customers in a respectful, effective manner that is beneficial, educational, and entertaining to our customers. When done properly, it can lead to a more well-informed customer, sustainable thought leadership, and arguably at a cost far lower than any other means of marketing.
That's perfect. So, who said that?
Yeah, this is where it gets awkward. I don't actually know. It was someone at Curata. Who specializes in content marketing. I'll have to get the name and link it up because that's shocking that I haven't.
I mean, that's the pitch there, isn't it?
That's it. Yeah. So I reel that one off a fair bit now. But like I said, I used to always butcher the quote. But that sounds a bit nicer when I put it down.
So just before we jump into this, I want to let our audience know, the listeners, the watchers know that this episode, all the key takeaways that Simon brings up are going to be as part of a download, which you can get to at wpelevation.com/Simon Thompson. So everything that Simon the email that Simon has already sent me is good enough to just release, to be honest, yet alone actually diving into it. So that's coming up. We'll let you know when you can access that. This should be up and live now. So Simon, this is the bit where I kind of am like, right, we've got 25 minutes or whatever. I want you to completely change my content marketing strategy. Simple, right? Take me through some of the main points when it comes to content marketing that are going to help me move the needle for my agency. Like, where do I start?
Sure thing. So before I get into that, I just want to mention one thing, and we sort of touched on it earlier for WordPress consultants and freelancers and digital agencies, that those sorts of businesses, among others, tend to not be doing content marketing as well. And we sort of had that feeling as well, but it was all anecdotal. It was all through conversations we'd had with digital agencies. So we actually decided to go out and collect a bunch of data on that. And by collecting a bunch of data, we had a VA go around to the websites of 1,000 digital agencies. So by digital agencies, I mean web designers, developers, WordPress consultants, et cetera, and we had them essentially rank their blog on a scale of 0 to 4. So I'll let you know what that scale looks like and why it was 0 to 4. One caveat I will mention is the only ranking that we looked at was on the frequency of post. And I know that isn't the only metric to look at for content marketing, but it is sort of telling of how much effort and commitment someone's putting into it. So here's what that looked like. So a rating of 0 meant they just didn't have a blog.
Yeah.
A rating of 1 meant they were posting 1 to 3 times per year.
Yep.
Rating of 2, 1 to 3 posts per quarter. Rating of 3 was 1 to 3 posts per month. So we're getting into the category of, they're giving content marketing a good go now.
Yep.
And a rating of 4 was posting once a week or more. And that's what we would call an optimal posting frequency. If you're posting once a week or more, then
sure.
You're putting yourself in a position to leverage content as an asset fairly well. Here's what we found. I mean, we knew that a lot of agencies and consultants weren't doing content particularly well compared to other industries.
Yeah.
But we didn't realize that, just how poorly they compared to other industries. And I mean that with the greatest respect. So, what we found was out of 1,000 digital agencies, that the percentage of them that were posting once a week or more, so what we would call an optimal frequency, was 7%. And that's sort of unheard of in any industry. So we thought it was, I guess, alarming, but also means there's a lot of opportunity for agencies and consultants to start sort of setting themselves apart through content. About 30% didn't have a blog at all, and about 30% were posting, 3 or 4 times per year or a handful of times per quarter. So, that's a pretty long preamble into a few things I can get into, but I just thought it was worth a mention.
This is the blog post. This is actually available on Content Kite, though, isn't it? Yeah, so we'll share this link, because I had a read before as you shared when you showed this, and what I found was interesting is there was, to me, a bit of a divide clearly between people who basically weren't doing anything and people who were at least trying to do something. There wasn't really a middle ground.
Yeah, exactly right. I guess one of the main things that we were most concerned about was that group that was in the mushy middle, I guess.
Yeah.
So they were putting time and effort into creating content in a minimal sense, but in our view, they probably weren't getting any results. So if you're posting a handful of times a year, those the blog posts take a lot of time to write.
Yeah.
And so that time, in our point of view, is not the most effectively.
So where do we start because I'm a prolific blogger. My business blogs maybe 3-4 times a week. We don't have a problem producing content. WP Elevation doesn't have it. In fact, if anything, it's quite the opposite. We've got too much content, and we struggle kind of keeping hold of it. But I've been there. I know a lot of the elevators out there. I know a lot of the guys listening here are out there. They know that they want to do it. To me, the big thing I hear is they go, yeah, well, I wrote sort of 4 blog posts and I didn't see anything from it, so I kind of didn't really bother. I'm like, it's a long-term game plan that you need to implement. Where do we start if we want to start, getting traction with that?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing I would say is put a strategy in place. And I think a lot of people hear that, or they read a lot about this on the internet, and at that point they just switch off. They go, that's a content expert, and I don't want to think about that stuff. Sure, I'll write a couple of blog posts, but we sort of came up with a framework, and we didn't come up with it, but it's one we use, and it's nice and simple to follow. It's called the hub and spoke method, and it essentially just means you come up with a central idea or a central topic that would appeal to your target audience, and you schedule 12 topics around that central idea. So to use the example of Content Kite, we work exclusively with digital agencies. So our central idea is how to get more leads for your digital agency, and then we just create a bunch of content topics, and every time we come up with a topic, we say, is this going to help a digital agency or a consultant or a freelancer get more leads? And if the answer is yes, then we'll consider writing that as a topic. If you do that, you're doing more than probably 93% of agencies and consultants. So that's the first thing I'd say.
It's interesting that when you say we take an idea such as to help businesses get more leads or whatever, and this is something we've been trying to tell a lot of people, and I'm seeing more and more people understand this, is your blog and content strategy should be helping your customers do the exact same thing that they're going to eventually pay you to do. That value gulf, blogging is part of that journey,
Definitely. And I guess this is probably a good point to mention. One of the main errors that we see a lot of people doing is they write about themselves far too much and don't necessarily think about the problem they're trying to solve for their customer.
Yeah.
So the number one thing we see is, agencies of developers writing about, how good they are at, HTML5 coding languages and, what's going on there. And your customer is employing you so they don't have to think about that stuff. They really care in a lot of cases. Sometimes they might, but I would say just write about the problem your customer has, not about how good you are at X.
Yeah.
Assuming you're writing all the good stuff, it's, detailed research, it's, unique and all those buzzwords.
Yep.
There are 3 things that anyone can do to just leverage their content well beyond having the blog post just sit there on their blog. So I can get into those if you like.
Yeah, man, definitely. Yeah, that'd be good.
Cool. So the first one is run a content upgrade along with every piece of content. It doesn't have to be every post, but the good ones are high traffic pieces of content. You can do this. So a content upgrade is essentially another form of a lead magnet. And for those who don't know what a lead magnet is, it's basically a piece of gated content that you offer in exchange for an email address. And I mean, the topic of an email address is probably for a whole nother podcast, but it's valuable to have a list that you keep in contact with.
Yep.
So a content upgrade is a very specific lead magnet to that blog post. And the reason that's important is because when someone comes to your blog, I think everyone gets into their head that, people just love them and they've read everything about them and they've gone to the about page and they're all about that company. And it's just not the case.
Yep.
They've come to that blog post because, they found it and it solves a specific problem for them, hopefully. So the only thing we know for sure that they're interested in is that piece of content. So if we can create something that's super tailored to that piece of content that they can get in exchange for their email address, that's really valuable. And it doesn't have to be, a super detailed piece of bonus content. It can even be a PDF of the article. And people at this point sometimes say, well, where's the value in that? And I mean, if someone comes to your blog post, they don't have time to read the article, they see it's a very lengthy piece of content, if they can download it and take it away and read it at another time, then there's value in that. Oftentimes it's a checklist or a cheat sheet that summarizes the article. It, it adds an extra layer on top that people don't have to read the whole article to
and I mean, we actually teach this in one of the courses at WP Elevation. I teach the concept of content silos. So if you talk about SEO, have an SEO lead magnet, have you talk about whatever. But you're saying that what you can do is you can even do that per post, and it doesn't have to be something overly. I think a lot of the time people think that content upgrades and lead magnets have to be like 40-page ebooks, whereas we can see in actual fact sometimes, like you say, it can be a checklist. Hint, guys, by the way, when you go to wplelevation.com/Simon Thompson, that will be a content upgrade for this blog post and for this podcast. It doesn't have to be anything hyper complicated.
Exactly right. Yeah. So I guess the second thing would be content promotion. And a lot of people do this. They recognize that there's value in not just letting the blog post sit on your site and hoping people come to it, because they oftentimes just won't. So a lot of people go out and promote their content, and they'll reach out to publications that they've linked to, and they'll say something like, hey, I noticed you wrote a post about X. We also just wrote a post about a similar topic. Here's the link, have a read and let me know what you think. And that's generally code for can you share this with your audience? Can you share it on Facebook?
Yep.
What we started doing was, and we did it by accident, as we were writing content, we were reaching out to these blogs and publications that were in the end going to link to, and we were asking them if they had anything extra to offer, like a quote or an additional piece of insight.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
And people are generally pretty happy to give that. It's sort of, it makes them feel good because, they're seen as the, authority on the topic.
Yeah.
All they have to do is hit reply and send you a very quick email with a quote or something like that. And so that's great. You get additional insight and a quote for your content.
Yeah.
But what you also get is when you do publish that article and you let that person know, because A, they're seen as an authority in the article, and B, they're kind of invested, they've put something into that article, the success rate of them sharing that article is significantly higher.
That's genius. Yeah.
So it's a really good way to just get extra people to share and in a way that makes them look good as well.
Yeah.
And then the third one would be sharing multiple times on social media. And, some people go, well, what's the big deal here? Or I don't want to share more than once on social media. Kissmetrics actually did a study on this where they can upload. This is one that got shared multiple times. I'll get into how many times multiple times means. But they essentially doubled the traffic that they were getting from social platforms when they, on Facebook, if they posted once on Publish and once a month later, on Twitter 6 times, so on Publish 2 hours later, next day, next week, next month, the month after that, and then 3 times on Google Plus, so on Publish the next week and then the next month. They doubled the traffic that was coming to from social platforms. And that's really easy to do if you're using something like Buffer. You can do 5 minutes. A couple of points, just change the headline when you post it, and if your audience does say something about it, like I'm seeing this headline too much, please stop, which just isn't going to happen, then you can peel it back. The reason it probably won't happen that people are going to see this as spam is because those algorithms are set up that just most people don't see every post you make. In fact, far less than that. I mean, on Facebook, I think 5 to 10% of users will actually see a post that you post. So publishing multiple times is actually pretty important.
Do you know, it's interesting that I recently read Grant Cardone's 10X, which if you haven't read, I highly recommend. I think it's amazing. And he was talking about how outreach and promotion is part of these, massive levels of action. You have to put a huge amount of energy in to start gaining traction on posts like this. And one of the things that happened with one of my groups actually was that someone said, "Oh, you post too much, Mike, and I don't want to see this anymore. I'm leaving." And I was like, "This is perfect. Now, I'm glad that you think that I'm posting too much. How could you possibly think that I post too much content out?" So if that happens, personally, I think you're doing something right. Like, if someone sees your content too much, I think you've done something right, because you've obviously done something. Assuming you're not just hitting the spam button, over and over and over. This is something we took in, particularly with WP Elevation, is we realized that we would create a piece of content and then post it a couple of times on Twitter and then leave it. And it's like, there's a whole life cycle, there that you're just ignoring. And I think a lot of businesses, they focus way too much on the creating content and not enough on the promotion. And it's a bit like making a widget in a shop and then never attempting to sell it to anyone who walks by,
Yeah, it's such a good point. It's probably the most overlooked aspect of content marketing, and so important. I mean, we like to say that you should spend about as much time promoting an article as you do creating it. And creating an article can take between 2 and 8 hours, so you should be thinking about spending about that much time on promoting it as well. And you'll get it's a lot of work, but you'll get a lot more out of it.
It is, but we've noticed very quickly. First of all, we've noticed how many businesses don't want to do it. We see that, so we think, well, people are constantly saying go where your competition don't want to go. Most of them don't want to go down the promotion and outreach route, but also we found that it compounds this level of the first article is tough to get a bit of traction to. The second one is tough. The third one a bit easier, and it gets easier and easier, and you kind of have this snowball effect if you're willing to work hard at the promotion side of it.
Yeah,
exactly.
right.
I'm really glad you brought that up.
Yeah. And I mean, as you sort of start to reach out to these bloggers and influencers publications, like you said, the more you do it, it kind of snowballs because you build relationships with them. It just increases your success rate immensely.
Outstanding. Okay, so we'll have a quick recap. First of all, it's about a content strategy, and you don't think it needs to be any more complex than the hub and spoke concept, right?
No, I mean, you can get more complex, obviously, and you can get really into it and create buyer personas and create a whole lot of stuff like that. If you're just starting out and you're sort of, scared's the wrong word, but if you're tentative to get into this whole strategy concept, then just come up with a central idea and create 12 topics around that.
I like that a lot.
And by the way, you'll be surprised how much easier the topics come to mind when you have a central idea in mind. Another thing I would say on topic ideation and coming up with topics and stuff like that is just write whatever comes to mind. It's just the concept of free writing, and just don't edit yourself and write down, 20, 30, 40, and you'll get some gold. Most of it will be crap, but you will get some gold.
Yeah, I like that. It's funny, again, we've done these exercises in the past and we kind of go, okay, so let's just tell me what it is you want to do. And they go, well, I want to help, non-profits increase their search rankings. I'm like, okay, how are you going to do that? Just tell me one way that you can do that. And they tell it, and then they go, well, I don't know if I can think of that many ideas. And before they know it, they've got like 20 or 30 bullet points. I'm like, we're kind of writing the content now, like it's honestly not more complex than that. But the hub and spoke idea, fantastic. Yeah, let whatever comes out. Don't edit yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that. And another thing as well, is I picked up a few other bullet points that you've kind of just been dropping in, mate. It's thinking about the problem that you're going to solve for your customer and writing about those problems, as opposed to writing about what you do and what you're great at. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one thing I will mention is there is a place for, thought leadership and writing about being a leader in your industry for X coding language or whatever it may be. There's a place for that, but just know that the only thing that's going to attract your ideal customers is something like a problem they're having or a goal they want to achieve, that your content helps them do that.
That's really interesting. So when we write about our customers and our problem, but if we do really want to sort of add a few extra notches to that authority, we can write occasionally thought leadership pieces about ourselves.
Yeah, definitely.
That's fantastic.
I just wouldn't make it the main priority.
Yeah. No, that's good. No, I like that a lot. That's fantastic. Next, we've got about running a content upgrade, which is a super specific and targeted piece of content related to just one article. Is that right, if I kind of sum that up?
Yeah, perfect. So, I mean, an ebook is great. A generic lead magnet, they're great. They will collect email addresses, but it just goes back to that point of most people who are reading an article, it's probably the first time they've been to your site, or maybe not probably, but they're not as obsessed with your content as you think they are.
Yeah.
They're reading that one article. They're probably not interested in your ebook, but we know they're interested in something else about that article.
Yeah, and it's funny, again, what you say about that is there's a big difference, I think, between what people think they need to give in terms of value and just sheer quantity of content. And when you have, like, we often kind of use that phrase, look, if you're serious about SEO, make sure to download our SEO checklist. And it's probably, they're on an SEO-based page, they're on an SEO-based post, and we just say, if you're serious about this, if you want to do the next step, the checklist is all you need. And it is. It's short, it's easy to consume, and it's related to what they're reading,
Yeah, and that's actually a really good point you bring up. So another way to do this, it's a bit less labor intensive, is to create sort of category specific content upgrades.
Yeah.
So all of your SEO posts have the same content upgrade, all of your web design ones have the same, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's a really good way to do it if you want to sort of minimize work. But yeah, it doesn't have to be War and Peace in an ebook.
Yeah, publish that. If you're writing that much, publish it.
Yeah.
Cool. So I've kind of split your promotion piece into two, because to a lot of people, reaching out to a network in general will be quite new and scary to them. And you've also, of course, got reaching out to a network for quotes. But can you just expand a little bit about when people say, well, I'm going to reach out to these other posts and people to just share it? So before you get a post, how does that work?
Yeah, so I guess it goes back to that idea of, making people look good. That's sort of the essence of sharing. So people will share stuff that makes them look good. So if you link to them in an article, that kind of makes them look good. But it does that, more so when they're quoted in the article or when they've actually given something specific to that article. So I guess one more point I would mention on that is be clear about your ask. I mean, I'm sure you've got plenty of these before, but a lot of people just get emails that are like, hey, I wrote this article, you wrote something similar, I thought you might find it interesting, feel free to check it out. They know that that's crap. They know that you don't just want them to check it out. They're expecting you to ask something. So just ask them, and they will respect that point of view, and they may not share it, but if they're going to come across as looking good by sharing the article, there's no reason. So if you want them to share it on Twitter, say, hey, if you like it, think your audience would find it valuable, could you please share it on Twitter? Maybe you want them to mention it in a roundup post if they do roundup. Just determine what your ask is and ask it.
I've been surprised, and a lot of elevators have done this as well, is just actually how easy it is and how responsive people are to want to share other people's content.
Totally.
It's scary at first, but actually there's more people who want to do it than don't.
Yeah, I really geek out on this stuff. It's like a big psychology principle. But I mean, if you've read the book Influence by Robert Cialdini, it goes to that sort of reciprocity thing. If you're
influenced by who? Robert
Cialdini. So it's Cialdini. But yeah, it's a cracker. It just goes into all these, why people act why they do, and it'll touch on that concept.
I like that. That's going down on the list. Okay, and so also then you've got the concept of reaching out to people for a quote, which is kind of the next stage on from just reaching out to them, right?
Yeah, exactly. So like I said earlier, you get additional insight that doesn't necessarily live anywhere else on the internet, or you'll get a quote. So that's great for your article. It's unique and it's additional content. But B, it gets that person invested in the article, and look even better than just being a backlink in the article, because it's quoted from the horse's mouth.
That one's so good, and yet out of all of them, that's the easiest. Like, that one is the one that I can see people genuinely engaging with and having a process for, and yet it's the easiest out of every single one of them.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, when you're writing content on a schedule and you're writing something that isn't going to go out for another week, I think a lot of people write and then they'll publish the day that they write. Then obviously you can't do that. But yeah, if you know that you've got a week before something goes to air and you can try and get a couple of quotes, sending an email isn't hard.
Yeah. Well, how about this, Simon? You can expect a couple of emails from me. So there you go. I'm going to be asking you for some quotes. I really like that. That to me is a gold star next to that one. And finally, we've got about sharing on social media. It can't just be the classic, IFTTT publish once and it's promoted on Twitter once. There needs to be quite a bit of work and some length of time behind sharing and promoting on social, right?
Yeah, and again, this is just like another really easy, quick win. It's just queuing up a few more posts than you normally would in Buffer. So most people will share, like they'll publish the article, they'll share it on Facebook, share it on Twitter, maybe on LinkedIn, what have you. If you just do that a few more times on each platform, then you can double your traffic from the social platform, and it's not hard to do.
Yeah, it's obvious.
It's going to depend on what your social following looks like, but about double is a good sort of goalpost to aim for.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Simon, thank you so much for sharing that. What I liked about that is it's so practical, because we've all this is kind of the problem with marketing as general, is we've all spoken to marketing agencies and content marketing is this I actually don't think it is that new. I think you even mentioned on your site the concept of writing content to help people has actually been around a long, long time. But very rarely do we come across someone who just goes, oh, it's actually just, here you go, simple hub and spoke strategy, do some outreach, promote your content a bit more. So this has been absolutely phenomenal. Where can people reach out to you?
Yeah, so we actually put together a 7-day email course, and it goes into all of this stuff. So yeah, it'll cover the entire spectrum from putting the strategy together to writing the content to writing yourself or finding someone else to write it and promoting it, etc., etc. So people can go to contentkite.com/WP elevation, all one word.
Perfect.
Or if you just want to send me an email, simon@contentkite.com. If you've got any questions about what we talked about or just want to have a chat, feel free to do that.
Mate, that's awesome. Again, thank you so much for joining us on the WP Elevation podcast. And I'm going to let you get on with the day. You're in Costa Rica at the moment, is that right?
Costa Rica, yeah. So I'm doing the digital nomad thing and traveling around a bit. So
living the dream, mate.
Yeah, it's good fun. It's good fun. I'm loving it.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, again, Simon, thanks very much for having us with you, and we'll speak to you later.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Appreciate it.
Cheers, bud. Bye now. I hope you enjoyed that episode of the podcast as much as I did. Remember to visit wpelevation.com/Simon Thompson to download the checklist for this episode and leave us some feedback in the comments below. Please subscribe to the podcast and give us a rating and a review in iTunes. It really helps us spread the word. Just visit wpelevation.com/iTunes. Thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to your company on the next episode of the podcast. Until then, go elevate.